Hi, I'm Buddy Teaster, President and CEO of Souls for Souls and host of the Repurpose podcast. In this special episode recorded live at the Lowe's Hotel in Nashville, I was joined on stage by Becca Stevens, founder of Thistle Farms and president of the Center for Contemplative Justice. She says of herself, "I know how to raise money for mission, create opportunities for communities of women who are survivors, and speak in a way that evokes compassion." She does all that and more in this interview. Becca's one of a kind, so let's take a listen. You might not remember this, but it had a big impact on me when I first came to Nashville, and I was trying to learn to talk about Souls for Souls, and I had the chance to meet you, and I said, we're a social enterprise. And you said in a nice way, good, but I am now into justice enterprises. What does that mean? How has that changed? Because, social enterprise was the thing for a while, and you have always led about why these things really matter. So talk about what that means to you.
Yeah, so it's wild to me that we're talking about this, because for the first time in my life, because I have ideas and I have things I want to talk about, but I got to present this as a paper at Harvard last week.
Wow.
I know, right? And what a better time to be at Harvard. I mean, it was so fun to be there, and like they were checking IDs and doing all that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like I'm in the middle of it. But the whole idea is to really build a love economy, which is what Souls for Souls is doing. What is a love economy? How do we impact the economy with our highest ideals? And at the center of that is fixing some of the problems in the global market chain and elevating the place of the producer. But it's also claiming justice enterprise, meaning social enterprise is this huge thing, and it's businesses with missions. What justice enterprise is it's a mission with a business. That's the difference. And so what that means when you're a mission with a business, for me, is that we are willing to reduce the links in the market chains. We are willing to take smaller margins so that we can really pour our money into the workforce that is the mission, pour our money into training, and really say that is the priority. And so it changes everything. And so I think we shouldn't be lumped together with this idea of business with a social good, social enterprise. I think it really has a different place in the world. And if we could adopt this model of justice enterprise, consumers could feel really good about buying from them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. That's all. Just change the whole economy, how it works. You're the founder. The beginning was more about the women that you were serving. It evolved into the business. It's just as you described. How has your role changed over those years from right in the middle of it every day to and the Center for Contemplative Justice? How has your role evolved in leading that?
I don't get to spend as much time sitting in a community of women as I used to, which is my favorite thing. I love creating, like you're talking about, things you've created just this past year. Isn't that beautiful? And the things that you've created, and I love doing that, but it also continues to pull you apart. My role has changed because I used to make products. I used to make the candles and make the body balms that we do at Thistle Farms. Now, if I walk in and tried to make anything, I'd be pushed out because I don't have the appropriate accreditation. Do you know what I mean? It's over for me, that part of it. So I have to go home and make my own things. But we have an amazing CEO, Tasha, so I don't do any of the hiring, firing, any of that stuff. But I still get to at my heart, I'm an Episcopal priest. I've been ordained for 34 years. And so I still just love creating and developing community. And so always I move towards that. That is my tailwind. Going to sit with a group of women who are, pulling mud from a mountain and figuring out how to make that healing product like people have for 1,000 years. That is the sweet spot where I can take off.
So Becca, through the center and the other work that you're doing through the suppliers to Thistle Farms and other places, how are you bringing them in? Because it's one thing if you had just stopped with Thistle Farms, that's a lifetime of work, right? And that would have been enough for a lot of people. You have really broadened that circle. So how do you bring those people in? How do you tell that story so that they are connected to this justice idea?
Who's they?
The woman that you're going to go see in Guatemala and does the mud.
Oh, okay.
Not I people.
Well, that started all of it just started, and again, when you've had 30-year, 40-year careers, things, it looks like you've done a lot, but it's really just a long time you've done a little bit, but it kind of adds up. And it's like, you know, I think I just said yes. I'm a yes. I love to think about, I'm not a very visionary person. I don't have a 5-year plan, which would make me nauseous if I did. Like, here's what you're going to do in 5 years. It's like, then I'm not interested. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I would like to see where it's going to carry us together and what tailwinds and tailspins happen that we can react to. And I think I've been that person that I try to keep a lens of love on and say yes where it feels right. So early on, when we started developing new sister communities around the country, it was just saying yes to New Orleans. It was saying yes to St. Louis. It was saying yes to Nebraska. Wherever we were, it was saying yes. And it was just one house at a time. And then it was global. So then it was yes to Rwanda, yes to Guatemala, yes to blank. And so all of it grew slowly over time so that, it's about 30 countries and about 80 communities in the US. But it's a whole amazing team. And, mostly all I do is say yes and then pass it on. Like, hey, guess what?
We should interview Tasha separately.
Yeah, you should
to
interview
see how it
Tasha
really works,
separately
right?
for sure. I know, because it was, Jeff's here and a couple other people have been involved a long time at Thistle Farms and the board. And one board member said to me, probably about 8 years ago, when I was talking about the idea for whatever, hand sanitizer and COVID or bug spray or whatever. And they were like, and I started talking about these healing properties and like, there's no need to get in the weeds is what they said. And Kathy's here. I believe it was you, Kathy, who probably said it to me. I'm teasing, it wasn't you. They said, there's no need to get in the weeds. And I said, you realized I named the entire organization after the most notorious weed in the world. Like, I love the weeds because that is the creative space that calls us to say yes and then discover where we feel, I don't know, like not our purpose, but just like this is real, something real. Like we are really making relationships. We are really friends. We really are working towards the same ideal of love and justice. So if you can develop those relationships and slowly say yes over decades, that is what a movement is. That is what it's not buying a t-shirt for a cause on the internet. That's sweet, but that's not a movement. It's pouring your heart out and saying yes over decades.
Where you began Thistle Farms was working with women who almost by definition were in a tailspin. And you and I were talking this morning, sometimes it's a tailwind and sometimes it's a tailwind and it's a tailspin again. So can you, obviously that's the title of the book and that's what we're trying to figure out, but what does that look like for the work that you do at Thistle Farms and how it informed why you did it?
So, when I first started out doing the work, I got there pretty naturally. The way that we say it in the circle at Thistle Farms is no one gets to the circle at Thistle Farms because it went really well. Mm-hmm. We get there because there are places that are broken pretty radically for us. And the mercy has been it's turned into compassion. And that was true in my life. It's true in most people's lives that are part of the community. It's why there's some tenderness there and some grace for people when they walk in, just to accept people wherever they are in their story. So, in my brokenness, my father had been killed by a drunk driver when I was 5. One of the people that stepped in to help, who was part of the church, then began to abuse me. It went on for years. All of that was part of my story. I also had these strong communities of women and really knew that that was the saving grace in my life. So I wanted to offer something that I would want if I was coming off the streets or out of prison. And the first thing for me was safety. And it was like, I don't want to be in a warehouse. I don't want, this is all you have. But like, you were treated with this sense that this is what love looks like. It's lavish. It's peaceful, it's abundant, it's kind, it's resourceful, it's all those things. And I knew I didn't want any authority parts of it. That was the worst for me, authority. So we didn't have any authority in the house. It was free house, and it was stay 2 years. And the idea was nobody's going to be the hero of your story, which was the biggest thing, is like, nobody is the hero of my story. Nobody's the hero of your story. People can be good hosts. And there's so many people here who have been good hosts to women. I'm grateful, grateful. But that women get to be the hero of their own story. And so that's what we tried to do. And I did it because that felt peaceful enough that people could untangle the mess of the tailspin. Is, the visual you get is just untangling that takes a long time. And I wanted people to have enough time to do that where, you could actually have your teeth done. You could actually figure out what the court documents look like and not be freaked out. You could figure out your credit. You could figure out your mental health. You had time. That was why.
Becca, I said a little bit at the beginning, so many of the stories that we are surrounded by are all about, I won. I was successful. I got the outcome that I wanted. And yet we learn the lessons where it's broken, where it's hard. And I know baked into the women that you work with and the model that you have for having them together, they sometimes fall back down. How do they help each other get back up so that it's not who they are, that they relapsed or drank again or whatever the backward is?
So the crazy thing right now at Thistle Farm, so we just had the largest graduation we've ever had on Sunday. It was amazing to see all these truly heroic women coming from crazy gunshot wounds healing, deep scars, terrific tsunami of tailspins histories come together. And we had actually gone, I think it was about 15 months without one relapse in the entire community. Wow. If you know anything about recovery to know that, yeah, definitely. That's an applause. 2024 was the miracle year. That's what we call it. It was a miracle year. In my 30-year history, that's the only time that's ever happened. So when somebody relapses, as you would know, and that then did happen in 2025, it affects the entire community. It's called Sisters for Life. People are together. When you go through something like that and live in community for 2 years, you're sisters for life. And a lot of them work together too at Thistle Farms. So the whole thing is, that's the first people you call when there's a relapse. You call your sisters, and they know the system. And the director of all residential services and all the caseworkers who have gone back and gotten degrees are graduates of the program. So they know what they're doing, and they can get you in a safe place. People long to be safe. They don't long to be strung out on drugs and on the streets. That is a horrible reality of what addiction can do in people's lives, but that's not the longing. So if you can get to the longing, there's always hope. And if people know that, as mad as you might be, and I get really mad, that the deep truth is that love doesn't give up. And so you say, what can we do to help? Yeah. I don't have anything else to say because we just went through I went through a personal, dear sister who relapsed this week. And I was shocked and mad, heartbroken, all those things. We worked closely together. And today she is in a safe place in treatment. And I thank God, and we will be in a different place, but we will rebuild together. I believe that. And that's what I think is hopeful about community. It is the entity that holds us up and holds us accountable. It's why it's the oldest entity for healing in the entire world. If we can be community and hang on to each other, at least my feeling is that we don't have to give up. That is the antidote to what you're reading all the time on your daggum cell phone. Community is the antidote to that miserable feeling that the world is unkind and unsafe. That if we can find a place to be together, it's like we're going to be okay.
Becca, you've talked a lot about community, and you're an Episcopal priest. So you have these sources in your life. You talked some about, you've had your own tailspins. It's not been straight up and to the right for Thistle Farms the whole time. How do you get your cup filled again? Like, what are the things that you do maybe outside of that, that like, okay, I'm ready to go back in and be a part of that community?
Sometimes I get a smaller cup. I really think that's easier, than trying to fill up a cup. Is just like, I'll just go get a little shot glass and it's overflowing and there's not that much there and I feel good. So it's like, on those days, it's like, just get a smaller cup and be happy, right? But in real time, what I think is that that is so personal and intimate what fills our cup. But knowing that about yourself is important. I mean, really, one of the things I just had this conversation traveling with one of the graduates in Boston. I said, please have an opinion. Oh my God, she was like, whenever you want to eat is fine with me. Wherever you want to go is fine with me. Whenever we want to go back to the hotel, whenever you want to go back is fine with me. I was like, what do you want? Like, tell me, like, do you know that, like, what fills your cup? That's a really good thing to know. And it takes some knowing yourself. And for me, it is definitely bathtub, knitting, walking, making anything, having a original thought. That's one of my favorite ways to fill my cup. Like, I will go halfway around the world for a thought to rise up and go, like you're walking around and it's fine. And then all of a sudden, like this week in Nashville, you're seeing the cottonwood trees start to snow, and you go, oh, it's inspiring, or it lifts me up. And it's like, my cup is full. The cottonwood is snowing in Nashville. That is a gift. But to get there, you have to know what it is that you have to do to get there. It doesn't just happen. It takes practice. That's why they call it a discipline. It's a discipline. So if it's walking or running, which I imagine is part of your filling up.
Absolutely.
Like, once you can be honest with yourself, this is what it is, then you practice that. But it's not like everybody has to journal. That would be so boring.
Yeah.
But it works for some people, right?
So you've been a priest for 34 years, you said?
Yes, 34 years, and I have made it all the way to the lowest rung on the ladder in the Episcopal Church. I promise you, I started off as a chaplain, and I've hung on like that. Did I mention I have issues with authority?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's unrelated. I have to say, I was so pleased that you took off your shoes when you came up here. I'm like, did Becca wear shoes just because she was on the stage? I'm like, thank God she did not.
No, it keeps you where you need to be.
Right? So I have a question about that part of your life. It's obviously informed how you started Thistle Farms and your other work. Probably not everybody believes what you believe or how you believe it. How do you navigate that when different cultures, like you said, 30 countries, 80 communities? How do you bridge that?
I have a million answers to that. But I will say that having been ordained 34 years, and I know you navigate all this, all the places you go and talk, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. But for me, being a woman that is an Episcopal priest ordained, I am very clear I'm too Christian or not Christian enough for everybody in the room. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not in the same place, and that's okay. Like, I have no problem with wherever anybody is, and I just pray that people can see the work is valid and it speaks for itself without anything about it. In 2017, we went and started our first justice enterprise inside a refugee camp, because y'all know human trafficking and refugees are linked like this. It's the most vulnerable group without any identity and home for trafficking in the world. So we went where the women from Syria were coming into Levas. And we started making welcome mats from the life vests. And we had been there about 8 days, and we were leaving, and someone said something and somehow mentioned that I was a priest. And 100% of the people there were like, "You're ordained?" And I took that as a huge compliment. Yeah. Yes. So it's not like it's part of the work. It's who I am that inspires how I work.
Yeah.
It's part of the commitment to the work is the best way I can see it is like I came as a beggar desiring to believe that love could change things. So this work reminds me that love is that power. And so I stay grateful, but I don't have to, I'm not teaching Bible study or, by accident just baptizing people as I walk around. Yeah, exactly.
That could be a product that you have somewhere along the line.
Yeah. Oh my God, baptism in a spray can? Are you kidding me?
That's a whole trademark.
Okay,
I
it's
want
yours.
something for that because I think that's a winner. Like I said, I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to stick the landing on the
No,
times.
but you
I have
were
a
going to
couple.
answer how you navigate that.
There was a moment. So when I came to Souls for Souls, there was this kind of trying to straddle the fence. Was Souls for Souls a faith-based organization, which meant Christian, or not? And the logo had a halo, Souls for Souls. People make their own conclusions about that. And two of the guys who were the founding board members, one was a minister, and they both were evangelical Christians, and they'd traveled and done missionary work. So it was really important to them. So it was an early board meeting. Things were very bad at Souls for Souls. And I said, guys, we cannot keep trying to waffle on this. We need to say who we are. And so in that board meeting, we all turned to Nelson Wilson, who's a dentist out in Old Hickory now. And everybody looked at him and said, you were here at the beginning. Like, what's the story? And he paused for a second and he said, the work speaks for itself. Exactly the words that you used. So there was a moment, and I think we get to practice it all the time at Souls for Souls, where people from different political persuasions, religious faiths, from hardcore atheists to devout evangelical Christians can come together and do the work, and it doesn't matter. Like when you put the shoe on the foot, when you show up and you provide a coat to somebody whose house has been destroyed by a hurricane, none of that matters. And I think that's one of the, to me, especially in this moment or the last 10 years, that has mattered more than ever. Like it's a place where that can happen consistently across the world. And so Nelson saying that 12 years ago was one of those moments. It did feel like a light bulb. Like he answered the question in a beautiful way that has informed everything we've done since. So thanks for asking that question. Starting something, you have a CEO now at Thistle Farms. You're out supporting, writing, talking, doing all this stuff. One of the things, and I've said this before in other settings, there's a lot of focus on how you get into something, how you start a business, how you get a job. Nobody talks about exit. How do you leave in a way that is graceful and inspiring? You're not ready to leave yet, but what does that look like for you as you start to think about the time when you're not in those roles? How do you leave in a beautiful way?
So I think I want to answer that with a story. Is that okay?
I hope you will.
So the whole thing about how long to stay or when to go or how to do it, I think there's this myth in justice work or faith work or volunteer work that you have to always be inspired. Like you have to leave if you're not inspired. And I just want to say, I don't think that's a part of it. I don't think inspiration is part of that commitment. I think it's the initial buzz to get you going, but no one asks a farmer, if you're not inspired, you don't have to milk the cow anymore. That's not how it works. Right? I mean, I'm serious about that. Like, why? I mean, there's nothing biblical or spiritual about you have to be inspired to love your children. It's like that's what you're called to do. So, anyway, I was in a particularly up and down moment, and that fickle muse was nowhere near me. And I was out in Nebraska, which is the worst place to feel that. And it was gray, and the buildings were gray, and the sky was gray. Everything was gray. And I was out there with a woman who had never flown before, never been anywhere, one of the graduates. And she was like all happy, which made it even kind of worse.
Get down here with me in the
but
ditch.
I did what we do, and I kept thinking, this is going to be it for me. I'm going to quit now. I'm going to exit now. This is it. But I did what I was supposed to do. I preached at the cathedral in Omaha. We raised the money. They started an amazing program, a justice enterprise. We met with the foundations, asked for money, left on an airplane at 8 o'clock at night. And we were about 20,000 feet up, and I realized I was feeling sorry for myself like this because she was crossing the stupid armrest. She didn't even know that rule.
The worst sin. If we're honest, the worst sin.
So I'm feeling sorry for myself. And then I realized she's actually just pushed me out of the way, and she's leaning out the window. And we'd gone 20,000 feet, and there was a super moon, and everything gray was gone, and the moon was haloed and stunning, and the clouds had all these deep colors in it. It was so beautiful. But then she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I didn't know there was a sky above the clouds." That is an amazing thing to have to say because, she had left a very abusive foster home in before the 6th grade and spent time on the streets as teenagers. And then we graduated her to prison at 18, which is what we do. to victims of especially sexual violence and the violence and vulnerability of poverty and addiction. So she had seen the underside of bridges, the inside of prison walls, the back side of anger, the short side of justice, but she had never imagined the top side of a cloud. And I just said to her, you know what, Sophia, I'm good for another 5 years. We do this. We keep coming together, all of us. And there's plenty of people in this room that have gray. There's plenty of people in this room who are not that inspired right now by our whole world. We do this because there are people who don't know there's something beyond the gray. And we know that if we can stay with it, that other people will get to imagine a top side of a cloud. And that's why I am here. That's why Souls for Souls are here. And that's why I'm pledging to give, and I hope everybody is pledging to give, because there are people who don't know there's something beyond the gray. And it doesn't matter if we feel inspired today, if we keep loving each other, that muse will come back around and we'll feel it.
Bravo. Look, I have another question, and I would be an idiot if I asked it. That was a beautiful way to end. Becca Stevens, I cannot thank you enough for being. Thanks for listening to the Repurpose Podcast with Buddy Teaster. You can learn more about what we do at s4s.org. And if you like this content, please share, rate, and review our episodes wherever you get your favorite podcasts.